Hello, welcome back to the Watford Way. I'm here for quite a quick live stream today. I won't keep you on here for too long. I know Soccer Aid is on ITV at the moment, so I imagine lots of people are tuning in for that. I hope you are all doing well, of course. I've had a lovely barbecue this evening, some lamb, some chicken, some halloumi, a jacket potato as well. So, yeah, I'm very full up. I feel stuffed actually, and yeah, it's been quite a warm week in the UK, which is always good as well. Lots of news to dive into today. We'll talk the latest transfer news, of course, towards the end of the show. The Udinese sale that has apparently stalled, according to reports, and Tom Cleverley joining Plymouth Argyle. So once again, thank you so much for joining me this evening. I was meant to be joined by a guest, but unfortunately he had to shoot off at the last minute. So you do just have me this time round, I'm afraid. We'll start with Tom Cleverley because the breaking news came out a few days ago. I think it was on Friday evening actually that he has now joined Plymouth Argyle, which for me, is a great move for Tom. I'm really happy that he's managed to find a new club after Watford. I was quite worried for him actually that he wouldn't be able to find something prior to the new season, of course. But to see him go there in quite a stable environment, at least compared to what Watford offered, of course, is a real positive actually to come out of this weekend. Now, I was on a Plymouth podcast last night called the Block 9 podcast, so do make sure you go and check that out. And they asked me loads of questions about Cleverley's tactical nous, what he's like as a person, his career at Watford as well. And yeah, I only had positive things to say, of course. Tom, is the ultimate professional. He did the whole Watford journey, if you will, from coming to the club on loan back in 2009 to rejoining us from Everton, captaining the club. He was with us during that big FA Cup final season. And then he went on to manage the 18s, and ultimately he became the full-time permanent head coach. So Tom very much went through the full Watford journey, and to see him now at Plymouth, for me is fantastic. And do let me know your thoughts in the live chat below as well. Dylan says, hello, what is the latest information on the Reading guy, mate? Do you know? We'll come on to that towards the end of the stream, Dylan. And thank you so much for your super chat as well. Very much appreciated. So yeah, back to Tom and Plymouth. Once again, for me, it is a great move for him as a young English manager. He's one of the youngest in the EFL. The questions I got asked last night on that Plymouth podcast were kind of in relation to what staff he would take. So Paul Robinson, potentially Damon Lanthorpe. But what I want to talk to you about today in regards to Cleverley is there the potential for him to maybe take a couple of academy or first team players from Watford to Plymouth? I was asked this last night. I said Tomdeli Bashiru was a potential option. Someone like Amin Nabazada, Leo Ramirez Espan as well. Ryan Andrews potentially too. These are players that if Plymouth, want to put in a loan offer or potentially buy them off us, it wouldn't surprise me if Watford accepted a deal like that. So definitely an interesting discussion to have. And in terms of their actual budget in League One as well, I was told yesterday evening they've got pretty much the second or third highest budget in that league. And of course, they'll be coming up against Luton Town as well, which is going to be an interesting narrative. Of course, Tom Cleverley playing them. And of course, we want Luton to remain down there for as long as possible. So, yeah, before we dive into more of the juicy news, I did want to address the news that Tom Cleverley has joined Plymouth because, yeah, I do think it's right. We, of course, address that. And hopefully he has a good season. I wish him nothing but the best. Udinese is the real big topic I want to talk to you about today. And Tutto Udinese, they're a local Italian outlet close to the club. They put out a report, it was either yesterday or the day before, I can't quite remember, that Gino, João Paulo, and their representatives had travelled to Luxembourg for talks with Guggenheim Partners, who are led by CEO Mark Walters. Now, these talks, it seemed, were to finalise a potential €200 million deal. That is the figure that was quoted in the reports. Unfortunately, though, judging by what I've read, it seems like these talks have stalled towards the final stages. So, as I just mentioned, Gino, João Paulo, who is his dad, and his representatives did travel to Luxembourg, and the negotiations have reached a stalemate, according to Tutto Udinese. Guggenheim Partners, led by CEO Mark Walter, want a deal to control 100% of Udinese. However, from Gino and João Paulo's perspective, they would prefer to maintain, according to this report, a minority stake of around 20% and the ability to continue to influence the sporting decisions of Udinese in the transfer market. And this proposed compromise is not being accepted by Guggenheim Partners at this stage. So interesting to read that, because I think Watford fans, from what we've seen from the Watford Observer and other reports in the media, it looked like this deal was close to completion, potentially in the next couple of days. Unfortunately, I think Gino's greed is getting the better of him here. I'm not quite sure what they're thinking. For me, why would you want to, stay involved in Udinese? You're being offered a huge sum of money. The report stating €200 million, was the quoted figure here. And Gino and João Paulo still, for some reason, want to maintain around 20% and continue to influence, sporting decisions when it comes to transfers. So when I first read this, I really did struggle to kind of get my mind around, the logical, rational thinking. Is there an advantage for them to maintain 20% in Udinese? I'm not entirely sure. And it seems like this investment company, Guggenheim Partners, they seem quite reputable. I spoke to my friend over in New York. He's based in America himself, and he seems to think they're quite a well-known investment company over there. They're looking to diversify their portfolios now into football, with Udinese as kind of their flagship club. So for them, of course, it's their prerogative to, own the whole shebang, if you will. And yeah, Gino, it seems like, according to this report anyway, João Paulo, his dad, and Gino want to maintain, a 20% stake and influence sporting decisions. So if this deal does go through with that agreement where Gino can still influence decisions, will that mean we'll still see deals done between Watford and Udinese? I'm not too sure, but some interesting developments. For me, this is something I want to get over and done with as soon as possible. It seems like, from what I've read, especially in the Watford Observer, it's really Watford's prerogative to get this done ASAP, because that will then allow us to retain, of course, the likes of Georgie Shafatatse, Imran Louza, and Kwadwo Bar. And without that new money coming in from Udinese, if it doesn't go through, before the transfer window closes, for example, we might have to sell one of them key assets. So that is my major concern. Let's take a look at some of your new comments. Dylan says, TDB, no way to Argyle. It was just a suggestion, Dylan, that I mentioned on the podcast I was on last night. Melanie, one of our channel members. Hello, Melanie. I hope you are well. You say, I feel very unsettled about next season. I feel Tom will take some academy players with him. That's interesting, because, especially with the transfer business we've done so far, which I'll come on to later in the live stream. Whilst I'm still disappointed about Tom Cleverley, for me as a Watford fan, I'm just having to accept we are what we are. We're a chaotic club. We do sack managers on the regular. It's just something that happens, unfortunately, at Watford. And whilst it's frustrating for us, we're not unique in the footballing world. Stoke, for example, sack, the same, if not more, managers than we do. Hull City are the same. Preston, get through their fair share of managers as well. So a lot of Championship clubs do operate in the same way. Unfortunately, though, we probably are the worst culprit of the lot, to be honest with you. We're the worst of a bad bunch is the best way to say that. So I get your feeling, but there's no denying, for me, Melanie, that Kiprianu, Baxter, and Bowler so far. They're fantastic deals, all on free transfers as well. So, you've got to be a little bit excited, surely, from that perspective. Richard, again, one of our channel members. I hope you're well, Richard, enjoying the lovely sunny weather. Good luck to Tom. Hopefully we'll get the back in that Gino failed to do. I think he will do as well. And the Plymouth owners, from what I gather, they're very patient people. What I was told last night is that the environment itself is very stable. They said Tom could effectively lose 10, 11 games in a row and still have the full backing of the board. Whereas at Watford, if you go, a month without winning a game, all of a sudden the pressure is very much on your back. And I think we'll see that next season. Gino and João Luca, especially, in their recent statements, have outlined the club's aspirations. Those are to, at the very least, achieve playoffs and hopefully get Premier League promotion. And as I said in the previous video, that is what I'm now going to judge them on moving forward. So, hopefully Tom does well. Plymouth will be my second team for the time being, at least for next season anyway, because of course they'll be competing against Luton Town. So I do hope he does really well down in Devon. Dylan says, I think Leo Ramirez Espan to Plymouth could happen. Richard says, long way from home for Tom. Hope he gets to see his family regularly. Otherwise, it will be quite lonely for him. Yeah, that's an interesting point, Richard. And even at Watford, I think he said in some media interviews himself that even with us, his family didn't move down with him. He stayed in a house on his own. I think he mentioned he used to get like a local pizza takeaway quite often. So you can imagine, as a manager with the work rate they have as well, he was getting into the office at 6 a.m. He wasn't leaving till 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. It's hard work. It's demanding, emotionally, physically, mentally. It's the hardest job in the world, I feel, to manage Watford Football Club. Of course, there's bigger and better clubs than us out there. But in terms of the environment we have from the outside looking in, you can't get much more chaotic than us. So a great learning curve for Tom. I think he did as well as he could have done with the squad he had last season. And to now go to Plymouth, once again, I am repeating myself here, but their environment is very stable. It's very nice. It's a bit like us. They're family friendly. They're quite a tame fan base, no disrespect to them. And I think he'll do really well there. I hope he does so. Anyway. Ryan, good evening, James. Hope you're well. I'm hoping Tom does well at Plymouth Argyle. I hope so too, Ryan, and I hope you're doing well as well. So finally on Udinese, as I said, I just want this to go through, as soon as possible. A 200 million reported fee. That should be enough to make Gino and his dad and their wider family quite happy in terms of a return on their investment. Of course, for them, the reason they might want to hold on to 10-20% stake is because it's their home country. They've owned the club for such a substantial period of time. Of course, with anything in life, if you've had something for a long time, whether that's a pet, an ornament, kind of an old book or something like that, something that's valuable and emotional to you, it's hard to get rid of. So I understand it from that perspective. But I hope it can get sorted sooner rather than later. So just once again, they travelled to Luxembourg for talks. Of course, if you're just tuning in to the stream now, negotiations have reportedly reached a stalemate. Guggenheim Partners, led by CEO Mark Walter, want a deal to control 100% of Udinese, whereas Juan Paulo Pozzo and Gino Pozzo want to maintain a minority stake around 20% and also continue to influence sporting decisions in the transfer market. So we'll leave that there. We'll see what happens in the coming days and weeks with that. And of course, if any major news breaks in regards to the sale of Udinese, I'll make sure to update you here, of course, on YouTube and across all our social platforms. Remember, we're not just a YouTube channel. We're on Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and of course here on YouTube as well. So make sure to follow us across all platforms. So we'll end with some transfer news now. Quite a bit to get into here, actually. So we'll start with Hibernian. I mentioned this on a video a couple of days ago, but we've had a bit more clarification on what this deal could involve. So Hibernian are, of course, Ryan Porteous's former club. We signed Porteous from them actually for about £450,000, I think it was, at the time. And by all accounts, Porteous's Watford career hasn't gone particularly to plan. I think we can all agree on that fact. As I said in my recent video, I think he played his best football kind of alongside Wesley Hugh under Valérien Ismaël, I should say, a couple of seasons ago. And when he got sent off for Scotland in that Euro campaign, he's just not quite been the same player since then for me. So it's a shame, but reports coming from Herald Sport in Scotland are suggesting that Hibernian want Porteous back on a 1-year loan deal. Now, Porteous has 2 years left on his Watford contract. Is a 1-year loan the best option for us? Probably not. I mean, if they covered all of his wages, I'm sure that's something the club would consider. But I think with Porteous, it's clear to me that he probably doesn't want to be here anymore. He gave an interview, actually, as soon as he joined Preston and said, once again, the environment was very chaotic. It's very hard for a player to feel settled here. For me, if I was Watford and if I was Ryan Porteous, most importantly, I'd look to get out on a permanent deal, whether that's the Hibernian, Rangers, somewhere else in Scotland, or again, I think players should look maybe further afield to European leagues as well. We're seeing more and more British and English players playing their football in Ligue 1 in France, La Liga, Serie A, of course. People like Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmore, they're 2 Scottish players. They've made the move to Serie A. So I think Ryan Porteous should probably consider that as well. So an interesting move for him potentially. So again, we'll have to see how that one develops. I think for Porteous as well, it's key he plays regular football to keep his place in that Scottish national team. So again, as I said before, one to keep an eye on. Ryan with a question here. Hello, James. How do you think our new manager, Paolo Pezzolano, will do this season, or is it too early to tell? I think it's too early to tell at the moment, Ryan. I wish I could answer your question, but to be honest with you, I've not done enough research on Paolo to really give you a massive insight on him. I think once he's done his first official club interview, we get to know what he's like as a person, see a couple of pre-season friendlies here and there. I think I could give you a bit more insight then, but also as well, we're very early on in the transfer window. It's quite unusual for Watford to do as much business as we have already. 3 players through the door with a potential new one to join in the coming week as well, which I will get to, Dylan. I see you asking in chat repeatedly. I will get to that player in just a moment. But in answer to your question, Ryan, I do think it is slightly too early to judge what Paolo will do at the moment. But I am very excited for his arrival. And from my understanding, put this in your calendars, I believe the players are due back around the 23rd of June, or at least during that week. So the 23rd of June, around that time, I believe, is when they are due back for pre-season training. And I think it's the first pre-season game towards the start of July. I think it might be, the 2nd or 3rd of July, something like that. I'm not entirely sure. But the 23rd of June is when I've been told the players are due back into pre-season training. And that should be as well when we first meet Paolo via the club. So we'll get on to the big news, I should say. So that is that Reading insiders have confirmed. Now, again, this isn't official information. It's not come from a massive, credible outlet, but some relatively reliable Reading insiders who seem to have links close to the club have alluded to the fact that Amadou Mbengue is set to sign for Watford on a free transfer as early as next week. So this coming week, keep an eye out across Watford's social media. Amadou Mbengue is a 23-year-old Senegalese centre-back. I've seen some highlight reels from him. He looks absolutely superb. Once again, like Mark Bowler, a great character as well. I think it's important Watford continue to recruit, number one, young players, but also people that want to be here and people who can also kind of bring the positive positive energy to the place. And again, with Amadou Mbengue, it seems like he is going to be that player. And if Mbengue does sign, it would be our third signing from League One this summer, and our fourth player joining on a free transfer. So again, I do hope this is true and it comes to fruition, because once again, it's in a position we need. If Francisco Sierralta and Ryan Porteous leave, we've only really got a Bankwa, if he re-signs, Caben and Matty Pollock in them centre-back positions. So to bring in another young, promising player in Mbengue into that defence, is going to be another, very good acquisition. And I have to say, as much as I was critiquing Gino quite rightly after he sacked Tom Cleverley, he is, getting me back on board. I can't lie, before the new season begins. I know Melanie, we spoke about earlier in the chat, was feeling quite negative towards the new season. But for me, with the signings so far, if Mbengue does get confirmed, I'm going to be on that hype train. Absolutely. All of our signings, I do have to say, so far have been of the more defensive side. Nathan Baxter is a goalie, Mark Bowler a left back, Kiprianu a defensive midfielder, and Mbengue would be a centre back. So they're all quite defensive. I think what we'll all get quite excited about is when we're linked to, these flary attacking wingers. A new striker or two is, of course, a priority for Watford as well. So really looking forward to the rest of the transfer window. And as I just said there, I'll repeat it for you one more time. Reading insiders have alluded to the fact that Amadou Mbengue is set to sign for Watford on a free transfer as early as next week. Sometimes I hear things, I'm told these things in advance, but I personally haven't heard anything on this deal myself, so I can't comment too much. But some Reading insiders suggesting that he could sign for Watford next week. And as I said just a second ago, that would already be our third signing from League One this window, which for me is fantastic, because how long as Watford fans have we been calling for them to look in the lower leagues of English football? We constantly go to Belgium, France, Italy, and whilst that's okay, and whilst that's been successful for us in the past, there's also some great talent in England that you can get for a much lower value. And of course, if players' contracts are expiring and they believe in the project, as we've seen so far, they can sign, on free transfers as well, which is, of course, great to see. Callum is here. Hello, welcome to the stream, Callum. Dylan says, James, is it true we're looking at the Lens centre-back who's 19? I'm not quite sure who you're referring to there. If you could give me a name, it might come to my memory, but I've not seen anything to suggest that is true. The 8th of July is Boreham Wood away. Okay, that's our first pre-season game then. So a few more weeks to go until Boreham Wood, which is going to be interesting. And by the way, before we move on to the next transfer rumour, do go and check out my recent Q&A video on the channel. I had loads of questions submitted. I could only answer about 20 or so, but I really enjoyed doing that. Actually, we covered everything from transfers, pre-season, a new stadium, the FA Cup final we spoke about in that as well. So yeah, do go and check that new video out on the channel if you have the time this evening, of course. Melanie says, no, you felt unsettled, not negative. Okay, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. The next player we're going to speak about is Mileta Rajovic. And I've actually seen this afternoon, I saw a rumor, I'm not sure where it coming from, but I believe Poznan are now interested in Mileta Rajovic, which is interesting. But the more credible information we've received is that Paphos FC in Cyprus are interested in signing our Danish striker. Now, if Paphos does ring a bell, that is, of course, because King Ken Sema joined them in the January transfer window. And our old sporting director, actually, Cristiano Giaretti, you may remember him for that famous butterfly post he did on Instagram. He now runs their sporting operation over in Cyprus. So a potential reunion with Rajovic and Ken Sema over on the sunny island. Is that a deal I would like to see happen? I think it's realistic. Whether they can meet Watford's valuation is a different story, because Luca, who first reported this, suggested that Watford were looking for about £3 to £4 million, which I felt was, quite high, considering how Rajovic has performed in the last couple of seasons. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that one does come off. But if it does, It would mean a reunion with our old sporting director, Gioretta, and of course, Ken Summer over in Cyprus. And Paphos themselves are one of the better teams in the Cypriot First Division. They've qualified for the Champions League qualifying matches as well, I believe, too. So, yeah, an opportunity for Rajvic to play in a nicer climate and also potentially in European football as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the players are due back into Watford around the 23rd of June. So do keep an eye out for that as well. The last player to speak about, and this one's been going on for, it feels like quite a few weeks now, is when we first heard about this interest. It's Francisco Sierralta going off to AC Auxerre in France. Now, this fee is reported to be about 1.5 to 2 million pounds. We keep seeing articles from various outlets suggesting that it is very close to being done, although it feels like it's been that way for quite some time. I know Francisco himself was over in Chile on international duty, which of course may have hindered the progression of that deal. But I imagine after these international matches finish, Francisco Sierralta will move on from Watford. So again, I think I mentioned this in a recent video anyway. I wish him all the best. But in the way Paolo is probably looking to play next season, he's probably not going to suit the system we're going to use at Watford. So yeah, I think it is time to cash in on Francisco. And a move to France to play in their first division, isn't too shabby at all. So I wish Francisco all the best. Right, I think we'll start to wrap up there. If you guys have any other questions, do let me know in the live chat, of course. But we've covered Tom Cleverley moving to Plymouth, which I do think is a great move for him personally. Udinese sale potentially going on hold for the time being, which for me is, of course, quite frustrating because we want that done as soon as possible. And then we spoke about Hibernian, interested in Porteous, Amadou and Bengu, potentially signing for Watford as soon as next week. Mileta Rajvic off to Cyprus potentially as well. And the players are due back around the 23rd of June. And also, Boreham Wood being on the 8th of July, I imagine the much anticipated kit reveal will be around that time as well. So towards the end of June, start of July, keep an eye out on Watford's social media. I'm sure they'll tease the kit reveal closer to the time. Ryan says, will I do another Q&A? I probably will, actually, Ryan, when the transfer window concludes at the end of the summer. Eugene McGeever, Ashley Young is a free agent now. Yeah, I'll tell you what, we'll end on this then. So Ashley Young, it's an interesting one. I don't think this is ever going to happen. I know it's been touted for many years now. A lot of people speculating about the fact that it could happen, it might not happen. For me, it's not something I'd like to see us do personally. Mark Bowler as a backup in that position is, a very good option for us. I think the big thing for us to get done now is the return of Caleb Wiley on loan. If we get that done, to have Wiley and Mark Bowler as our two left back options is, at least compared to last season with Larouche, a vast improvement. So I think Watford just need to get the Abankwa deal, of course, and the Caleb Wiley deal over the line with Chelsea. Ryan says, do I know who Paolo Pezzolano's assistant coaches are? I've got no idea. Who would you like our first few games to be? So I'll, of course, do a fixture reaction video when that comes out in towards the end of June. But who would I like our first fixture to be? Oh, I wouldn't mind a cheeky Charlton away Friday night to open the season. Lovely stadium, Charlton, by the way, if you've not been there before. Really well maintained, quite big actually as well. I think it's bigger than Vicarage Road actually in terms of capacity. So Charlton away, I wouldn't mind for the opening game. Wrexham at home as well, of course. That's like a blockbuster tie as well. I imagine that'll be broadcast on Sky Sports as well. We saw last season with Leeds, they take up a lot of the television fixtures. And I think with Birmingham and Wrexham coming up into the league this season, I think they'll be heavily covered on TV. So for me, Charlton away, opening game, or Wrexham at home, I think would be really exciting as well. But yeah, I'll talk about that more when the fixtures do get released. Right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me on this quite warm Sunday evening. I really appreciate your time. And I'll catch you again very soon whenever some more Watford news breaks. So thank you for watching. Enjoy your evenings, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye.